Yes. And good morning, everybody. Great to see you. I'm going to ask that everybody mute themselves unless you specifically have something to say, just because of background noise and telephones and things like that. So if you could just push the mute button, that would be great. And then if you have something to say, of course, unmute yourself. So wonderful to see so many of you here. Welcome. I want to point out that we have a brand new member, Kaki Logan, who's came to our picnic, but this is her first meeting. And it's very nice to see you, Kaki, and a few other people we don't see very often. Debbie, welcome. So glad to see you. Um, Very nice. What a good group. Oh my gosh, I'm proud of us. So as I said, I am recording the meeting. We are having a wonderful presentation today, the bat lady, the bat professor. She's from UC Santa Cruz, my alma mater, so I'm very excited about that. And also with Bat Conservation International, which we'll hear more about in her introduction. But how we usually start a meeting is with a slideshow of things that you've sent me, and so I think we'll just go ahead with that, and that will give more people the opportunity to arrive if they're a little bit late. So I'm gonna start the slideshow in a minute, and thank you to those who send me photos. I always really appreciate them. And let's see what we've got. And remember that you can always send me whatever you want to share. I'm always so happy to get things to share with people. And what do we want to do? We want to go. It's funny how every month it seems new to me. So here we are in October. I can't believe it. And, where other parts of the country are all just leaves on the ground. We have lots of flowers going on in the fall. And I saw these crocus at the UC Botanical Garden a week or so ago. Um, oh, let's see. 1 second, because I think I'm not going to be able to let people in while we're talking. Let's see. Oh, maybe we are. Okay, sorry about that. I heard a little beep, but I guess it was not that. Um, yes, so I want to thank Jean Hewitt, who always donates little seedlings of marigolds to the plant sales. And this was 1 or even 2 years ago, the plant sale. I got some seedlings, and they reliably self-sow every year. So I have a huge crop right now that just started of the marigolds from Jean. Joyce Hennessy shared this with some of us that her Aristolochia grandia flower opened, and she said it was only open for about 2 days, and it only happens once every 10 years. So that is, really a labor of love to keep a plant like that, isn't it? That blooms so rarely, but really so spectacularly. As you see, she said it was 7 inches tall, the open flower. So that was pretty exciting. Um, Marianne shared her Tithonia and this monarch butterfly. And I'll say that I've never grown Tithonia, but I have heard at many pollinator webinars and lectures that it is one of the absolute best plants for butterflies. And so I think that I will add it to my garden. It looks really wonderful. Another name for it, I think, was Mexican sunflower, maybe.
Yeah, it makes there's two different varieties that you can get. and the Annie's carries it. One is much taller than the other. There's one called, I think the tall one is called Torch, and there's a shorter one, which is whose name escapes me. But I mean, if depending on the amount of space you have available, but once you plant it, it self-seeds like crazy. So you'll have it forever once you planted it. So
No. Thanks, Gillis. Well, it looks like Marianne's might be the tall kind. Looks pretty big, but it's lovely. Then Louise recently planted a lot of natives in her backyard. And just to show that many natives do bloom in the fall, and these are in full bloom right now, which is quite beautiful. Globe Gilia and Sticky Monkey, one of my favorites. And Bernadette sent several bouquets, which I appreciate. Very shows just how just with a few plant materials you can really make something quite cute and special. And these also,
Oh yeah.
her tribute to the A's here with the yellow. and these, Bernadette, you outdid yourself.
Oh, that's
Thank
gorgeous.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. Marilyn Joyce is quite famous for her outdoor picnics, and she puts these beautiful arrangements together. Unfortunately, it's a little hard to see the floral arrangement just because of the backdrop, but you can see that it's colorful and fun. Marianne sent me her yucca in full bloom, very spectacular. Really so.
Actually, that wasn't me.
Oh, Eileen, was this your yucca?
Those are my yuccas.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Eileen.
I'm showing, yes, the one on the left, the full white one, was spectacular, and someone hacked it down in the night and left a mess, a stalk. But the one on the left, the pinky one, is the valiant pup, I call it, that's now striving and blooming. It's this I took yesterday, so I'm just hoping it lasts and doesn't get hacked away.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway.
Yes, thank you. Well, they're very spectacular. Well, you guys are neighbors. That's why I confused your photos. Anna sent me these from her South Carolina trip. And Anna, did you want to say anything? In your message to me, you just said this one was cute, which I agree.
I thought it was very cute. That's why I took the picture with the sign, the little tiny little pansy-like flowers. Just, it was cute.
They are pansy-like. That's right. And then these, which I thought were the dreaded pokeweed. But
yeah, they had these all over. I was just so fascinated because I'd never seen it. It was called an American Beauty Berry, and my picture doesn't do that color justice. It's just a gorgeous purple flower, and they had them all. They were just all over. If anyone ever gets to see Brook Green Gardens in Pawleys Island, South Carolina, it's an incredible place. It's huge. You can't go through it in a day. There's 90 some acres, and it's made up of 4 plantations. There's all kinds of little tours and stuff to do. And a ticket lasts you can get a ticket. One ticket will last you 7 days. So it's a cool place.
And where is it in South Carolina?
It's called Pawleys Island.
Oh.
It's near like a lot of the beaches, Myrtle Beach, Surfside Beach.
Wow. Wow, beautiful. Thank you. I like trip photos. And then this close to home.
Yeah, this I've had for about 10 or 11 years. I bought this, it was in a 4-inch pot. I paid $3. It was my introduction to the Contra Costa Master Gardeners and at a school garden in Lafayette. she had propagated these. It's called Cassia corymbosa. It's actually an Argentine senna plant that will grow 6 to 10 feet, and it didn't bloom for several years, but now when it blooms, it's just a gorgeous yellow. It gets little seed pods, and then which supposedly you can propagate from. So I may try it.
Yeah.
It's just lovely, and it outlasted a lot of much more expensive shrubs and trees. So all for $3.
Well, it's very showy to have that yellow color in the fall. It's
Yeah.
very nice. Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful. And then many of us went to the El Cerrito Art Association, thanks to our Eileen, who prompted us to do so. And the show was fantastic. I'm sorry I didn't take very many pictures of the actual art, but 3 of our members did make floral arrangements to go around the room. And this one was by Paula Shu. And this is Paula's hand right here, so that those of us who miss seeing her can at least feel that she's in the picture. That was a very, very elegant one near the entrance. And then Tanya also made 2. Tanya, you can talk about them if you want, but also I wrote what you wrote to me, the dahlias. I'm sorry they're a little bit blurry because I made the picture bigger, but those were very elegant, also so pretty. And it's nice that you say you were inspired by Paula from last year. And then this fantastic fall and winter color, I think, Tanya made for the art show also. And the red and then the gold poppy pods. Very dramatic, beautiful. I love that vase. And then our Louise also made some, and I got a picture of her next to one of them. So you see a few of the paintings from the art show. It was quite spectacular. And these are some of the ones that Louise made. Have a wonderful autumnal feel and lots of mixed materials from the garden. I really am so inspired by you guys who can make these fantastic arrangements out of, you know, such different kinds of things. And then I couldn't resist putting these in. Tanya said that she wished she could have bought this art piece, which was named Audrey, after the carnivorous plant in, what show was that? I can't remember what movie that was with the carnivorous plant.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, thank you. Little Shop of Horrors. That's right. And then Louise and I both wished that we could have bought this cat that was made out of maps. That was absolutely fantastic, but it was already purchased when we got there. So those were art show pieces. So thank you for participating in the art show, and thank you, Eileen, who made a nice donation to the club.
Well, you're very welcome, and we just appreciated so much the color and the form, the shape, and I gave them away to special volunteers who worked really hard, and also to this new staff person we've just started working with at the community center, Bridget. I gave her the red vase, so she really went over and above, and so that was on her desk Monday morning when she came back, and she just was thrilled. So thank you so much. It really, I love the cross-pollination, and just we found room for everything. We can always find room for them. I move sculptures and things. So thanks for doing it, and thanks for coming.
Wonderful. Yeah, the show was great. Wonderful. All right, and then other events that have gone on. We did have a picnic last month, even though it was the only rainy day of the last 6 months. So we were inside instead of outside. But as you can see, all the doors and windows are wide open, and everyone is wearing their coats and hats. so it was very well ventilated. Um, we gave away some door prizes at the picnic. And I'm sorry, I don't have photos of the ones made by Kate and Sharda that were absolutely beautiful. But this is one that was made by a nursery in Tiburon for our library grand opening. And we gave this away also, which I was glad to have it to give away. It was pretty fancy. And then on the same day, Barb brought a new arrangement for our Blue Star Memorial. And I'm not sure that all the new members know that these are garden club projects sponsored by El Cerrito Garden Club. We have 3 of these around town. And Barbara and her husband Bob, for a long time, were putting the wonderful arrangements each month or for holidays. And so it was nice to see a new one up again. Very nice. This one is at Arlington Park. There's one at the El Cerrito Town Hall, City Hall, and there's one at the Red Oak Victory as well, the Victory Ship. And then another in-person event was our herb group lunch at Louise's, which was super fun and outdoors, and had a sort of fall theme, as you can see. The plant sales that took place last weekend. This was the wonderful crew at Fong's location. And Fong couldn't be here today because she has a new grandchild and she's visiting. But thank you very much to Louise, Lemerle, Anna, and Judy, who worked at Fong's, and to everybody who donated plants. And then the plant sale at Tanya's, I'm sorry I don't have a picture of, but many people volunteered there, and there were wonderful plants there, and maybe we'll hear some numbers about the plant sale after we're done. And then we've announced a couple of times about the quilt exhibit that's going on right now, really, and that's why Mary Mashuda, our member here, couldn't be at the meeting this morning. That the quilt show is honoring her sister Roberta, who was also an active member of our club, who passed away last year. And the special exhibits at the club are quilts that are made out of fabric that Roberta designed and had made by artisans in India. And then the quilters were given a choice of different pieces of fabric and could make any quilt they wanted as long as they used at least 3 of Roberta's fabrics. So these are just 2 of the examples. Pretty fabulous art. Right, and then finally, this is to get us in mood for our presentation today. Louise, as many of us know, has many wonderful collections of different things. Mountain lions, snowmen, I can't think of everything else, but she also has a great bat collection, and these are some of her bats. This one, a wonderful textile, and these natural history are real bats. I'm not sure about the vertebrae, what that's from. Louise, are you on here? Do you want to say anything about your bat?
Just that the vertebrae looked like a bat, and
Oh.
so it got put in the bat collection.
Oh.
And the mounted bat, my husband gave me one year for Christmas, and he bought it at a shop in Wyoming where we had toured.
Okay, fabulous, great. And then this little guy who graced our table at the herb lunch, and who I really appreciated. Great. Okay, so that is our slideshow for today. Thank you all for listening. And yeah, thank you to everyone who shares, no matter what you share, if it's whether it's vegetables or a bouquet or,
I was just calling to confirm
it's
the
all
appointment for
interesting to
tomorrow
me.
between 8 and 9.
I'm gonna mute somebody. Okay, so so thank you again for all of those. So into the kind of more businessy part of our meeting. Pam might have a treasurer's report, I think. If Pam, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes, I do. And so I'd like to share my screen.
Okay.
And, oops, there's people in my way. All right. So this is the Treasury report through, Tommy, can you see this? Can you read the numbers?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. I enlarged them a bit. And so this is a Treasury report from September 8th to October 6th. And so what it tells us is that, well, it shows the opening balance, the ending balance for this period of time. It also shows income and expenses. Excuse me. The income is dues, and then at the bottom, it shows our balance on October 6th, which is $13,706.35. I have a large deposit, of course, to make from the plant sale proceeds and the check from the Art Association, but those will be reflected on next month's statement. So that's it.
Oh, thank you, Pam. Now, do you know what the deposit, what the plant sale total might have been?
Yes, it is $1,439.
Oh my gosh.
I know, isn't that impressive?
I think that is really good for a kind of a midterm plant sale.
I know. I didn't expect much, to tell you the truth.
Excellent. Thank you so much to everyone who helped with the plant sales. That's really awesome. Great.
Are there any questions about the treasurer's report? Okay. Well, I'm available if you think of something later. And so now I need to, oh, here, stop share. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. That's great. Okay, and I also am hoping for a report or a little talk, a little short explanation from our Penny Pines person. And most of you know that that is Ranger Clark. Ranger Clark Milsom is going to talk just a tiny bit about Penny Pines and how that is a donation that we can make at any time of the year to honor someone or to memorialize someone or just because we're thinking about our California forests. So Clark, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's good to see everybody. Very excited around here where we live at the next to the bay in Richmond at Marina Bay. I would like to tell you that around here we have 1,000 trees, and we have about 1,000 people living in this little village, and there are multiple little villages around the bay down here, which are part of the Richmond project at Marina Bay. But I am participating in that program. But even more excited for me is the excitement I feel when I remember how long our garden club has been planting seedlings in multiple places, multiple locations in the state of California. The California experience around Penny Pines is really extraordinary. And we appreciate, or I in particular appreciate, the history of that program in our club. It's been a difficult year for all of us in a multitude of ways. For us in the club when we can't come together live. to pass our container to collect our coins or our dollars to grow more trees in the forests that are at great risk in California. But we're there. I noticed by Pam's report, in our fund, we have over $400. If you are particularly interested in a memorial in memory of a person, club member, or a spouse or whoever, you can contact me or Linda Raxel, who is also our representative in the Penny Pines program. And we will put you on board for probably May to recognize those people. At this point in time, the Forest Service is dealing with fire prevention and fires to put out. And at the same time, they're dealing with COVID. And so the program, as it connects directly with the Forest Service, has been at risk. But it's they're there. They might not be on board planting a lot of trees at this point in time, but they will. And so clubs across California particularly will be once again active in seedlings and new trees to take the place of those trees that are disappearing, unfortunately, in our forests. And I'm grateful to the executive committee who have contributed $100 from the general fund to that effort, given the fact that we aren't meeting week or month after month live, okay? But thank you very much. Now, if you want to send a memorial, give me a call. I'm in the book. And at the same time, Linda Raxel also could provide information and a structure around that program. Thanks so much for the time.
Great, Clark. Thank you. That's wonderful. Yes, so, you know, at our live meetings, and I can see right away that there's at least 4 people here who probably have never been to a live meeting because they joined during the pandemic. We always pass a can around where we put donations in for this forestry program. So yes, now we have to rely on just remembering to send Clark a check. Makes it a little harder, but soon we'll be in person again.
Made out to the El Cerrito Garden Club.
Of course, yes, made out to El Cerrito Garden Club. And the book that Clark refers to, of course, is our little yearbook and roster that has everybody's contact information. This is the new one that we've just gotten, thanks to Bonnie Smith and thanks to Jean Hewitt for getting the information together. And I'm going to be distributing them slowly but surely. So some people have already gotten them, but I will be giving them out. Please check and see what, if you see any typos or mistakes, and we will probably publish in the newsletter a little column called Change These in Your Yearbook with the mistakes listed. So this is the new yearbook, and we are grateful for that. Any other officer reports? Landry, did you want to say anything as vice president? Unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm not really sure I need to say anything as vice president right now. I have been working for the last couple months to develop a contract to bring a proposal to bring to the Albany Community Center for the move to live meetings, which we have every reason to think is going to happen in January. And I think actually Gillis is the person who should give a report other than that, because I've been focusing on the site stuff and he's been focusing on program, which I'm really thrilled with. So thank you.
Thank you, Landry. And as we mentioned in the newsletter. Landry Gillis and I did go to the Albany Community Center for the Berkeley Garden Club meeting and, wanted to observe how things work there. And it looked very good to us. There's certainly some technical details we're going to have to work out about how to Zoom our people in and so forth, but we will be working on that. So we hope probably starting in January to be having live meetings, and that will be exciting. So thank you about that. And we will hear from Gillis when our speaker comes on, because he's going to introduce, which is going to be great. Yes, Barbara.
As part of new business, I'd like to make a motion that we buy Martha a new computer, that the club buy it for her. And she's spending so much time on it. And when it doesn't work easily, it's very hard, as I found out this morning. Took me minutes and minutes to get it working out. So I think it would be a nice thing for us to do. She's spent lots of time doing this, and her computer isn't real good. So I make a motion that the club provide a new computer for the president.
I second that motion.
I thank you so much. That is such a kind and sweet idea. I don't think that's I don't think that can happen. The bylaws specifically say that the club funds cannot go for the purpose of, members' own benefits. So I don't think that legally we could do that, although it's very nice of you to think of it. Landry?
Well, actually, I think what we need is a new club computer, and it should be located with you, but it belongs to the club, and it can be used for all kinds of purposes. When we need to get you a laptop type computer that's portable, that you can bring to meetings when we are meeting live, and we can use them in our technology problem in a good way. I do think it's really important that meetings occur on a club computer.
Oh, well, actually, that's totally different. And
Yes,
that does seem reasonable, and especially since we will need the technology
We
in
will.
January.
We
But
will.
I wonder, does anyone remember, don't we have a club laptop that,
Isn't it
maybe-
5 or 10 years old?
oh,
We can't just rely on some old laptop, and I think we probably need to what do you call it, powwow with Eileen Naughtley, who's doing the presentations, and see what she recommends for a computer and things. And before we go ahead with that, I would powwow with somebody who's using a particular kind of computer and doing it successfully. Okay.
yeah, thank you, Tanya. So Eileen is the person at Berkeley Garden Club who's doing their technology.
Good idea. Good idea.
All right.
All
Well,
right. So are we carried? Who's going to be involved in contacting that person and making the purchase and all?
I will put her in contact with maybe Gillis and whoever is doing that. I'm not technically savvy, but I will make sure she gets in contact with the people that need to know about it. So
Okay.
she's a very nice person. Yeah.
That's great.
maybe Gillis and Ruth and I can look at the technology. Ruth already had a good idea about something.
Great. I'll contact Eileen.
Thank you.
Okay, then.
All right. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do you want to rescind that and make a new motion that reflects the club use?
Do we need one new motion?
Mm-hmm.
We do, all right. Somebody else should word it then.
Okay.
Landry?
I make a
I,
motion.
I, the motion's really right now, given what they're
Right.
talking about, is to explore
Right.
having a club computer and what that involved, because we don't have any numbers about prices or anything yet.
Right.
I mean, I'm fine for it. I'd vote for it, but I just think that we haven't gotten there yet.
Makes sense.
That's a good point.
So the motion is carried. It's still active, but we're carrying it or tabled, whatever the proper term would be, I believe.
Why don't we vote on it?
No, I don't think we should vote until we come back with a proposal. Because I
Oh.
think Martha and Ruth and I can meet, offline and because there are several things that we'll need to link up with, because we have already budgeted for some technology support for the meetings, and if we're going to add a computer in, which seems perfectly reasonable, we should come back, I think, with a proposal to do that.
Thank you.
The motion was to explore, so that could pass.
Yeah,
That
that
could-
could pass.
Oh,
That could
oh, explore, that should pass. Let's vote.
Because there'll be a few other much cheaper things that may be required, probably a video cam and also
Mhm.
possibly a microphone, but we need to go to Albany and see what kind of
Yeah,
microphones
well,
they have,
when we were-
if they have them.
Yeah,
Find out
when
what
we
they
were
have.
when we were there, the sound system was extremely good that they were using. They were not using, for some reason, the projector that was present in the building, and we need to
Go and
do a little
see
explanation why
what
they
was-
weren't.
what-
Frankly.
Because it was a good, as I understand it, it was a pretty good,
Yeah,
it
was-
should have been a good quality. I mean, based on what it was, it should be a high quality projector.
Yeah.
So it's not clear why they weren't using it.
Yeah, I
They may have not used it because they were recording the meeting. So let's get some more information and powwow with Eileen. I'll get you connected.
shouldn't matter,
I'd
but
have to
we
see
can
why
we
that
can
would matter.
we'll come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
I think we want. I doubt Ruth and I are going to be going away for a few
Yeah,
weeks,
so
so
we'll
I
do it
think we'll come back.
mid-November
We'll
or
do it in
December.
November and report back in the
Yeah.
December meeting, probably.
Hey, just contact me when you would like to get together. What would be good times for you? Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Great, thank you. Well, wonderful. All right, good. So thank you for all of that. Any I'm kind of speechless by that. Where were we? Oh yes, reports, club reports. Any study group reports want to be made? I will say about the herb group that there will be a slight change in chairpersonship. Barbara, who has run it spectacularly for many years, is going to step slightly aside, and Fong and Anna have agreed to co-chair the herb group going forward. So thank you for that. Any other study group news that you want to share?
I would like to just say that the succulent group does a fantastic job for the sale items. They're just beautiful. And they could go for 3-4 times as much as they are priced, but they're priced low when they go.
Yeah.
So they're very beautiful. I bought 2 pumpkins.
Yes, the pumpkins are especially fantastic, and
Yes.
Anna, your group is really fantastically active. I love it.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the people that participated. And our group has gotten much smaller. We keep inviting more people to come, but we had 4 of us that made the pumpkins here, and then I think Tanya and Marianne made more for their site. But it's a lot, it's just a lot of fun. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to all of the people who contributed the really beautiful plants.
Marianne and I made 25. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we only made 22 over at my house. So,
That's a lot of little pumpkins. That's really darling. Thank you for doing all that. Pam?
Well, I want to speak about the edibles group. So the next edibles meeting is on the 27th. And to remind you that now is the time to plant fall vegetables. So all of your yummy root vegetables, carrots, turnips, of course, lettuce, and even peas. It's not over.
Good. Yes, thanks, Pam. And we send out a Zoom link for that to people that have sort of been interested in the past, but anyone is always welcome. And so please let Pam know if you want to go to that edibles Zoom meeting, and she'll send you a link if you haven't had one in the past. Eileen?
I can't find my hand raise icon, but anyway, I got a note from Berkeley Horticulture that the first 100 people on Saturday will receive little pea plant in celebration of their whatever they're celebrating, 50th, 100th, I don't know.
100. They're celebrating 100 years there.
100 years. I thought it was, and I thought, really? Yeah, I guess so. And they're doing lots of festivities weekend after weekend, but I did notice that the first 100 people get a little pot of peas, and it really is true. It's time to plant your peas.
Amazing.
My peas
Anyway.
are doing great. They've got blossoms. Good, wonderful. The native plant study group, Robin is not here today, and I'm assuming it will probably meet next Thursday evening, 7 p.m. And again, that is, we send out the Zoom link to people that have expressed interest in the past, but if you're newly interested in that, please feel free to join us. Just let us know that you want the Zoom link. Other announcements or shares? Louise.
Yes, they have a number of things. First, I wanted to thank Bonnie Smith for the fabulous job in a very artistically presented yearbook. And then next meeting, we're going to be featuring the Sundar Shadi winning gardens. And so it's not to be missed. It's going to be a great meeting. And I'd like to solicit from any of you who took photographs of those gardens and the garden presentation to please send your best views. You don't have to send all of them, but maybe 6 of your best photographs to Martha. And Martha and I will be putting together the program for next meeting. And also just keep your eyes open in El Cerrito. And I'd like to thank Pam for making a presentation at the El Cerrito City Council. I'm not sure, has that happened, Pam?
It's the 18th.
The 18th, okay. And that's on Zoom too, correct?
I'm doing it on Zoom, yeah. I
All
don't
right.
really quite understand how they do it because it's an in-person meeting, but I was offered the option of Zoom, so.
So we can look into that, and maybe an announcement will go out to the group when we can actually attend the meeting via Zoom and hear Pam's presentation. I'm very grateful for her taking that role in the Sundar Shadi project. And
Excuse me for interrupting. I just wanted to alert Pam to the fact, ask to be put on the first part of the program.
Yes, yes.
To go like
Ah.
early, otherwise you'll be, it gets pretty dull. So
Thank
usually
you,
they'll
yeah.
put you on the first part.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. I thank you. I will do that.
Okay, so send your photographs of the Sundar Shadi Gardens to Martha, and always keep an eye out in El Cerrito for beautiful gardens. It'll also be mentioned at the city council that members of the community can nominate gardens, and it's coming up surprisingly quickly. We'll start looking at in the first of the year. And then my final project, we are getting very close to December, where we will be making corsages for our senior home on Carlson, which we've been doing. I think this is our 4th year of corsages. So if anybody has interesting dry materials, little cones or pods, or like those wonderful poppy pods that can be used in floral corsage or long-lasting corsage for those people, drop them off at my house or let me know and I'll come pick them up. We can also use nice ribbon or have plenty of wire. Barbara gave me a box of wire that'll last my lifetime. And but we do need pods and interesting cones. So if you have any of those around your yard or you see a neighbor that has some, please pick them up and get them to me by beginning of December. So thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Thank
Do
you.
you need
Louise.
containers?
We are doing corsages, so we no longer.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of the little tabletop arrangements, corsages. Never
Yeah,
mind.
so we converted to that because we don't have to worry about water and
Yeah.
length of the lasting. And the group was very pleased with our presentation the last few years.
Great. Oops. I don't know.
Thank you, Louise. And there's
did I
always
do?
a sort
What
of
did I do?
a fun party to make those little arrangements for the nursing home. Always beautifully hosted by Louise. So that is unmissable. Another Christmas December concern is whether we should continue doing the decoration of the El Cerrito Community Center trees. That's been a long-term garden club project where Lisa Chilton and I were talking about it the other day, and we can't really remember, does the city own the tree and then we bring the decorations, or how it works? But if there's interest in that, Lisa or I will start advertising, for you all to let us know if you want to be part of that. It's a nice way to have our name be in the community center, and to cheer people up when they come to classes there, stuff like that.
Is there a plan for a social meeting in December?
That's another good point. Would people like to make such a plan? And if so, could you form a little committee to do it? What are people's thoughts? I mean, of course, we will have our Zoom meeting in December, but we could have a social meeting also. It was wonderful last year to meet on December 30th, and we could have a similar end of late December or meeting if people think that would be a good idea. Any thoughts, pro or con?
We could make it a solstice celebration.
We could. We chose last year the end of December just so that the holiday festivities wouldn't.
That's true.
People are so busy, but even if it were late, it could still be Yule or solstice, related. But that would be very nice.
That would be at the Arlington Clubhouse again?
Well, that's one option. I think that's worked well for our little parties, our gatherings. If there's another option in play, we could talk about it. But what's nice about that is that it's indoor and or outdoor, and has worked for both of those things. It's not very expensive. I just got the bill for the September one. It was $204
Nice.
for the 3 hours that we were there. So that's not bad. Landry?
In terms of December, I think that's a good site because you can have all those windows open. I know it means everybody in their coats again, but we would hope there might even be rain that day, whatever day you pick. And it's certainly going to be cold. And we're reading there's a new surge of COVID coming for the winter, and it's already starting. So having a gathering where we have a real indoor outdoor ventilation situation, my vote would be that's a good site for us for the winter, unless somebody else has a better idea.
Thanks, Landry. And I'll just remind people that last December 30th, we were 100% outdoors at that site. We were on the patio. It was fine. Of course it wasn't raining. I hope it will be, but
Yes.
but
we don't.
so if people are interested in that, I'm not very interested in planning it by myself. So if people are interested in that, maybe you could start thinking about getting a little group together and planning it. I'll help, but I don't want to be in charge. I agree it would be very nice to be together. So, okay. Any other announcements before we take maybe a 1-minute break and then have our feature presentation? I see that our speaker is here. And I want to just finish our part of the meeting before we get her to commit fully to the to being on. Any other comments? All right. Well, if we want to just take a minute to stretch or get a drink of water and then come right back, and we'll have Gillis is going to introduce our venerable presenter. We're very excited. And I know that Louise has something she's going to share, and I'm not sure if she should share it before Dr. Frick or after. We'll have to ask her when she gets back. So it's 10:55, so I'll see you all in 1 minute or so. Good, okay.
I'm back, Martha. I think I might like to read it before because I think all the questions in my poem will be answered. It's short.
All right. All right. So almost everybody is back. Louise, well, Dr. Frick, before you signed on, we showed a nice slideshow of members' gardens and so forth. And among other things, we showed Louise's collection of bat art and bat memorabilia to get in the mood for your presentation. And she also has a poem that she's going to share just before you start. So we're going to turn it over to Louise for a minute. Thank you. Louise is our resident poet.
So in all my travels, I frequently encounter bats at dusk. And so this poem came to me a couple of years ago. I asked the little brown bats, "Where do you go in daylight, little brown bats? Do you find a dark cave in which to hide? Are you afraid of the flaming sun? Did you know that mosquitoes hover above the water? Have you seen the gnats dancing in sunbeams? Where do you go in daylight, little brown bats? Can you share your secrets with me? Are you really blind? And if I'm not careful, will you fly into my hair, becoming tangled in my curls, trapped in tendrils of my doubts? Where do you go in daylight, little brown bats? Do you hang upside down from broken branches in dead trees, where acorn woodpeckers store their winter food? Do you sleep soundly at noon? Do the tourists following guides with flashlights into dripping caves disturb your slumber? Where do you go in daylight, little brown bats? If I knew the answer, would I rest more soundly, be more contented, be more willing to love? Would my life change if you little brown bats revealed your secrets? Would I regret the loss of mystery? Will you tell me, little brown bats? Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you. All right, well, I'm really looking forward to this presentation. Of course, it's Halloween, Bat Month, very apropos. And as I mentioned to some of you, our featured speaker is from my alma mater, UC Santa Cruz. So I have a very warm spot about that. And Gillis, our program chair, is going to do a more formal introduction, but I'll just say, so happy to have you here.
Absolutely delighted to be here. And I love the poem.
Oh, nice. Okay, Gillis, over to you.
So as Martha said, we've picked the highly topical subject of bats for this month's talk. But as we also know, and as I'm sure we'll learn in much greater detail, bats certainly do not deserve their sinister reputation and are a vital part of the natural world. We are delighted to have one of the world's experts on bats talk to us today. Dr. Frick, as Martha said, got her undergraduate degree at UC Santa Cruz, where she's currently an associate professor of ecology and evolutionary biology. She did her PhD at Oregon State University, starting her work there on bats, which she has continued to work on. She's the chief scientist of Bat Conservation International and has published more than 80 papers in highly impactful journals about her work, and works around the world to study and help preserve bat populations. So we are greatly looking forward to her talk today to bring us or expand our knowledge of this very important part of the natural world, which is under great stress, as we know, and as those of you who saw today's New York Times perhaps realize how much of the natural world we are losing. They think in the last 50 years, up to a third of all wildlife populations, which probably includes bats, have been lost. So it is vitally important that we inform ourselves on what is happening in that world and what we might do, to help preserve it. So Dr. Frick, welcome to our club.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be here. And I'm also joined today. We have a special guest star with me, which is Erin Cord. Erin Erin is our community engagement manager at BCI, at Bat Conservation International. And she's an entomologist by training and has designed our Gardening for Bats program at BCI. So she's gonna actually help me give, she has a really wonderful presentation that she's put together about gardening for bats. And so I thought that was, given that you guys are a garden club, that was apropos. So I'm gonna kind of kick us off with a presentation about bats and really their importance as pollinators around the world. And then Erin will focus in on talking about gardening for bats. And please feel free. I want this to be interactive, and I'll probably get into my flow here. But if you guys have a question, raise a hand, or feel free to stop me and inquire. And then we can also hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end as well. So as you can see, like I love, I'm here in my campus office at UC Santa Cruz, and it's all things bats here. So, okay, so let me get my presentation going. Let's see, let me share my screen. All right. You guys, am I rolling here? Okay, great. So I'm going to focus today on really sharing some of the fascinating and wonderful ways that bats provide this incredible service of pollinating. Given that you guys are a gardening club, I wanted to sort of focus in on the interaction between bats and plants. Let's see, why is it not? There we go. Of course, bats are the only mammals capable of true flight, and this ability to fly is really like a superpower, and it really sort of underscores most of kind of the ecology and evolution of bats. It's a key to their incredible immune systems. It's key to their wide diversity around the world. And many of the ways that they've been able to exploit many different niches across the globe. Bats are the second most diverse group of mammals. A lot of people don't realize that because not everybody sees a lot of bats because they are sleeping during the day, finding nice in our neck of the woods here in the Bay Area, mostly big old trees like old redwood trees or oak trees, but also caves around the world. So there's over 1,400 different species of bats in total. So they're second only to the rodents in terms of numbers of species of mammals, and they account for about 20% of all mammalian diversity. And of course, that diversity means that when we talk about bats, they're not a monolithic group. Lots of bats means bats do lots of different things, and they come in all sorts of different sizes and shapes. Although, of course, their wings and their flight constrain certain aspects of their morphological evolution as well. And that underscores some key things about their population. So bats can really only have about one pup per year. Some species will have twins, but the fact that they're mammals, and so they are pregnant, but they have to fly, means that they tend to have slow population growth rates. So as you were saying, Gillis, we are really concerned about the state of many of our bat populations around the world, and they need our help. And bats help us. So we're going to focus today on bats and plants, but most bats are insectivorous, and bats are really important consumers of insects, including agricultural insects around the world. So here in the United States, it's been estimated that the economic value that bats provide to the US agricultural industry is in the billions. This is a very rough sort of back of the envelope calculation, but it showcases the fact that we get a lot of economic value by preserving our bat populations here in our own backyard in the United States. Likewise, the economic contributions to agriculture has been estimated in other parts of the world, including in Thailand. Thai colleagues of mine studied the wrinkle-lipped bat, which is a common bat. It's closely related to the Mexican free-tailed bat, which we have here in California, and is also the bat that's famous for flying out under the Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin, Texas. And this species predates heavily on the white-backed plant hopper, which is a common pest for the rice plants. And so these scientists actually calculated up the monetary value and then the actual amount of rice meals that the bat predation of the insect pest accounts for. And it's enough rice to feed about 26,000 people per year. So bats are also important dispersers of different seeds. So this species here, Artibius literatus, lives in Central and South America. And many of the fruit-eating bats that live in the neotropics have a particular fondness for figs. And figs are important pioneer species in rainforests. And so the fact that bats are grabbing these fig fruits and carrying them, in some cases long distances or across open fields that have been maybe have been cut down for cow pastures, bats play a really important role in helping restart like forest regeneration and restoration in tropical places, because they'll grab these fig fruits, they'll carry them long distances, they'll drop them, or they'll poop out the seeds, and then the figs can take root and start to grow and help restore degraded forests. And then, of course, bats are important pollinators for both commercially and ecologically valuable plants. Because bats are mammals, they tend to be larger than other kinds of pollinators, right? A lot of our animal pollinators are things like insects and birds. But the fact that pollen can get caught on the fur of mammals and they travel long distances. This is the lesser long-nosed bat that I study down in Baja California and Mexico. And they have high energetic demands being mammals because they're running at euthermic temperatures. So they can get really heavy pollen loads and they can carry pollen really long distances. In the neotropics, there's about 40 different species of bats that are important pollinators, all within the family, the Phylostomidae. So these are the leaf-nosed bats. So you can see the funny structure on the nose of this bat here. So all of the nectar-feeding and fruit-eating diversity that we see in the neotropics all occurs within this one super diverse family called the Phylostomidae, and they all have those funny nose leaves. In addition, in the old world, so in Asia and Africa and in Australia, in we used to call the Megacroptera, the old world flying foxes, there's quite a few species that are both pollinators and seed dispersers. And you can see the difference here, right? Not so much with the funny nose leaf, but really big eyes. So all these species in this group in the old world don't echolocate. So they're mostly foraging using vision and also olfactory cues with smell. Around the world, there's around 500 different plants that we know about currently that are primarily pollinated by bats. And sometimes plants can be pollinated by multiple different kinds of species. That comes from about 67 different families and 28 different orders of plants. So, and we're learning new ones all the time. And so in some cases, bats are both the pollinator and the seed disperser of particular plants that we're very interested in in terms of their economic value to humans. And that includes in India, the mawa tree, which is sometimes called the honey tree or the sugar tree. It's pollinated by bats. This has both economic and cultural value. Its timber is used for wagon wheels. The flowers are used for various different kinds of food products, and the fruits are also eaten. And you can even make like a seed cake out of it to feed livestock. And then also the kapok tree, which is grown commercially in parts of Asia, and the timber is used to make, it's similar to cotton, so it can be used for like making stuffing for pillows and things. And then maybe the most like famous example, I don't know if anybody here has traveled to Asia and ever tried durian fruit. So durian is quite famous for being the world's stinkiest fruit. It has an incredibly pungent odor that is unpleasant to most Westerners, but is also considered an incredible delicacy and is a very prized fruit throughout Asia. And this species is pollinated by Pteropus, one of the flying foxes, and in fact is pollinated by locally endangered species. So the being able to demonstrate the importance of bats for pollinating some of these prized fruits has really helped increase the image and the appreciation and the value of bats. Bats in large parts of Asia are also hunted for food. They're a really important cultural delicacy in many cultures, as well as in certain areas important for people who have very limited access to other forms of protein. But they're prized not only for as a protein source, but also there's cultural cachet in eating bat. So, but unfortunately, some of that hunting practice is unsustainable, and we're seeing certain species be highly threatened by increased hunting pressure. Closer to home, a species that I've worked on extensively in Baja California, this is the lesser long-nosed bat. This is the first species to ever be delisted or taken off of the endangered species list, the first bat. So this is a conservation success story. The species is migratory, and its range is shown in purple here. It ranges throughout central and southern Mexico, and then every spring it migrates up through the Sonoran Desert, following a nectar corridor of blooming columnar cacti and agaves. And so you can see here, this is a photo from one of my study sites in Baja, where the species is primarily foraging on cardone cactus, which are a very large columnar cactus. Due to sort of research and protection measures and coordination between both Mexico and the US, the species was delisted in 2015 after confirming that many of the roosts in both Mexico and the United States were protected, and that the population was stable and potentially growing. So I've worked on this species for many years in Baja, where they show up seasonally. For initially, it was people thought that they probably were resident on the Baja Peninsula, because it was hard to imagine how a bat that is, not that much larger than a hamster could fly, close to 200 kilometers to do the jump between the Baja Peninsula and the Sonoran or Sinaloan coast on mainland Mexico. We now have very convincing data that the bats are in fact migrating over the Gulf every spring. And that's made even more impressive because when the bats migrate, they're migrating when they are really pregnant. So this is a bat that has just shown up on the Baja Peninsula, and she is just about to pop. They give birth to a single pup in April, and this is a mom with her baby, and you can't see it in this photo, but the umbilical cord was still attached. So this is probably a 1-day-old pup. So if you can see, this is the mom's foot kind of wrapped around protectively. The pup's actually latched on here. This is the pup's wing. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor or not, but they will, so the very large baby compared to the size of the mom. This is as all the moms in there. I love this set of photos of just emphasizing how important and amazing bats are as moms, because not only do they give birth to these gigantic babies, but they will nurse them until they're almost the same body size as them till they're essentially like a teenager. So again, here's mama and here's her big baby that is latched onto her nipple. This is mama's foot holding on to her baby's head, and the baby's got her, foot over her mom's face, no sense of personal space, right? I let her go and mama was able to fly off carrying this big teenage baby that was still attached to her. They're just incredible moms. And they're doing this long distance migration when they are really pregnant. And so when they show up to their maternity colonies, where a bunch of females all aggregate together to give birth and sync together, they really depend on having nectar around. So one of our programs here at BCI is working on planting agaves near these maternity colonies so that we can make sure that with climate change and other things that are happening on the landscape, that the bats have the nectar resources that they need. So in the wild, the species feeds on columnar cacti as well as agaves. And in Jalisco and other parts of central Mexico, they also pollinate columnar cacti that are grown commercially to produce pitaya fruits. So pitaya fruit are a very popular delicacy in Mexico. There's not much of an export market because the fruit don't really hold very well for exporting, but they are highly prized in Mexico and rightly so. They are very delicious, very sweet. And so my colleague Vero Zamora and her student Nayeli worked on actually estimating the economic value of the pollination services by the bats to the pitaya industry in central Mexico. And so they calculated that it's about 2,500 US dollar hectare in fruit yield and size. And so like account for about 40% of the gross income. So with that, I'm going to introduce Erin and turn it over to Erin to talk about bat gardens, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions.
All right, thanks, Fred. Oh my gosh, those pictures are amazing. Seriously. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for letting me piggyback on this webinar with Fred. I'm super excited to talk to you all about bat gardens. Since you are a garden club, I feel like you guys are already probably doing a lot of this stuff, but I'm excited to talk about it more. Let me see. Next slide, please. Thank you. So before I get started, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about why this work is so important and why making a bat garden is something that you can do that really will have an impact. So I'm throwing a number out here. And it's about 1 in 3, there we go, bat species in the US are considered at risk. So about 30% of our bats are either listed as endangered, threatened, or have a documented population decline, which is quite a lot. And this number is going up all the time. There's a lot of different, issues and threats related to bats. That's kind of like a whole nother webinar in itself. But one of the issues is definitely loss of habitat. And so that's kind of where bat gardens come in. So kind of leading on this, a couple of statistics that I thought were interesting. About 83% of the US population actually lives in urban and suburban areas. That's most of us. So we're all kind of in these large areas. And if there is green space in these areas, it's not particularly diverse. And it usually looks like, that green lawn right there, a couple of trees, maybe a lot of non-native plants throughout, and just a very kind of limited ecological value of that space. And, within the United States, we lose about 6,000 acres of open space every single day. So that habitat loss is continuing to happen. And then one study I just came across actually last week, there was like a NASA image of kind of the United States, and they estimated about 40 million acres in the United States is covered by lawn at this point. And that was in 2015. So that number has gone up since then. It's kind of mind blowing how obsessed we all are with this idea of the American lawn. And we're trying to push away from that idea, because for a bat, there's really no useful habitat here. Very few insects, occupy this. So the bat is very sad. That's my sad bat. Thanks, Fred. All right. And so with gardening for bats, the first thing I really want to emphasize is this idea of native plants. So as Fred mentioned, we have pollinating bats, but most of the bats in the United States are insectivorous or eat insects, and all of the bats in your area are insect-eating bats. So we want to plant plants that will attract the native insects that the bats will eat. So we really want to provide this sort of bug buffet for our bats. And you really want to think about it in two ways. You want to provide roosting habitat, so kind of safety and shelter for the bats, and then also provide food in the sense of putting in native plants that attract insects. And this is the sign we've just developed for our back garden program. It's very new, very excited about it. Hopefully this will be available to the public sometime soon as we kind of develop this program. But the sign just tells you, we're attracting the bugs that the bats eat. And that's really what this whole program is about. And so how do you provide food with native plants? So with this, I like to say, we want to think about nighttime pollinators. Thankfully, bats are not eating our very charismatic, very popular daytime pollinators. They're not going after the bees, the monarch butterflies, anything like that. They come out at night, they're feeding at night. So they're looking at moths, beetles, a lot of different kinds of flies. And that's really what we want to think about with the bat garden. So things that are really fragrant, flowers, fragrant fruit, that attracts a lot of insects, especially in the night. Flowers, some flowers will close their blooms at night or at dusk. And you really want to think about things that either open their blooms later in the day or leave their flowers open all through the night. Things that are lighter colored, so kind of white flowers, yellow flowers, light pink flowers, those really pop at night. And those are things that moths kind of dial into and are really attracted to as well. And then if you're a huge insect nerd like me, you can get really, really in the weeds and start learning about host plants for native moths. There's a lot of information about this now, I would say, on the internet, if you kind of know what you're looking for and what to Google, or you can talk to, your local, you can find like a local entomologist or somebody that really knows a lot about this. And moth caterpillars, I have to say, are super, super cool looking. They come in all different shapes and sizes. They're really interesting. And so you can kind of put these plants in that host these caterpillars. The caterpillars then grow up to be moths, which are delicious bat food. So it works out for everybody. Oh yeah, thank you. Martha put in calscape.org, lots of info about host plants. Fantastic. And so thinking about native plants, you just want to make sure what you're looking for is native. And I think a lot of you probably already know a lot of resources how to do this. So these are just some of my favorite. As I was Googling stuff before this talk, I found the sfplantfinder.org, which seems like it's for the San Francisco area. So the list here, Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center is in Austin where I am, but they do have a native plant database that is good for the entire United States. So you can go on there and look at plants there and kind of figure out what's good for your area. If you have a local Native Plant Society chapter, that's great. I'm guessing a lot of you are already maybe experts on this, which is fantastic. And I feel like you don't have to tell you this, but this idea of buying plants locally, you want to avoid those large box stores that will remain nameless, don't generally carry native plants, and they carry a lot of things that are non-native or potentially even invasive. And we really just want to kind of create that demand at our local nurseries and support our local nurseries so we can find bat plants that are native. And I just want to do a quick plug. We're really trying to create bat plant lists kind of throughout the United States. And if anyone here is interested in helping me develop bat plant lists for this area, let me know, email me. Would love to do that. It would be really fun. And then we could just add it to our list. And then eventually we'll get all those lists on our website and just kind of give people somewhere to start in terms of a bat garden. And so all these pictures are me looking super cool in my own bat plant garden that I've got. And I realized a lot of these plants, when I did this presentation initially, it was kind of just a general US presentation. So some of these plants are not going to be found in your area, but I did try to come up with a couple substitutions that might work. And then I feel like you all are kind of plant experts on this, so you'll know. But just thinking about different things, I like especially to focus on sort of things blooming throughout the year. This idea of bloom time succession, where you kind of try to have something blooming as much as possible throughout the year, and thinking about our fall bloomers, like goldenrod is really great. I was reading about California honeysuckle. So I don't think crossvine is in your area, but California honeysuckle is a really wonderful vine that you can find. And then just thinking about kind of these different plants that are kind of blooming, things that are attracting pollinators, and things that are leaving their flowers open at all time. And then the second thing is thinking about roosting habitat. So you guys have some real legit trees there. I'm in Austin, Texas, and our trees are very scrawny. It's really tough down here. You guys have some big, beautiful trees, and trees are so important for bats. I think you know, when people think about pollinator gardens, they tend to think about just herbaceous plants, you know, because that's generally what the pollinators are looking for. They're looking for those flowers. With bats, you know, we want to include that, but we also don't want to forget about trees. Trees are so, so important as habitat. You know, as Fred mentioned, a lot of our bats live in these large colonies. You know, some of them live under bridges or in caves, but she's mentioned like a lot of them live in kind of these larger trees. And, you know, there's also our solitary tree roosting bats as well, you know, that you may have in your yard right now and never even know it. So a lot of diversity of bats, a lot of different habitats to provide for bats. And then wanted to do a quick plug for this book. It's called The Nature of Oaks by Doug Tallamy. He has some really lovely books about why you should just go native in your yard. I'm a huge fan. But yeah, oak trees especially, this whole book just talks about the amazing ecology of oak trees and how there's just so many different species of insects, you know, that rely on oaks as their kind of host plant, host species, and then all the different wildlife that roosts in oaks. So it really provides food as well as roosting habitat. And I also learned from biologists here that most trees do not close their flowers at night. So they just leave their flowers open all the time. Yes, trees have flowers. They're very small usually, and you know, something we don't notice, but just thinking about that too as food too. Okay. And then I just wanted to throw this picture in here. This is actually an Eastern red bat, but you all have Western red bats. And I think they do something very similar, and Fred can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they will curl up in a tree and kind of look like a dead leaf and just hang there. And so these guys are an example of our solitary tree roosting bats that you may very well already have. And just providing more habitat for them is really fantastic. I mean, just look at this guy. One of this biologists was walking through the woods and just ran into this, you know, completely by accident. But they're there, you know, they're there all the time. And then another thing, I know there are a lot of palm trees kind of in the Bay Area. I think there is one native palm that's great. And then there's a lot of kind of other, yeah, red bats and hoary bats. Love sycamores. That's amazing, Fred. This is great. Yeah, so with palm trees, if you have a palm tree in your yard, on your property, and it's not native, you know, that is okay. Don't cut it down. We just recommend that you leave your palm trees shaggy, because you want a lot of different species of bats actually will roost in these dead palm fronds. And I think, you know, people's kind of first urge is to just like trim this off and make it look really neat and tidy. But if you can leave your palms shaggy, that's just another way to provide bat habitat and roosting habitat. And then thinking about other trees as well, you know, large trees as well as small trees. This is a red mulberry, which I don't necessarily know if it's in your area, but elderberry is another kind of medium-sized tree that's really fantastic for bats. It has those beautiful white flowers. You know, it does really well in certain climates. And then there is a sumac in your area I looked up called lemonade berry. And that just looks like the most beautiful little kind of like smaller tree with these white flowers. And it just seems like a really great habitat for bats. As you can see, I already have a red bat roosting in my mulberry tree, which was really, really lucky to find that. And there's the sumac. And then other things with roosting habitat, kind of different concepts to think about, this idea of vertical layers. So if you have a smaller space, you might think, you know, this space is so small, it really won't provide, you know, any value to different species of wildlife. But if you think about it vertically instead of horizontally, you can actually do a lot with very little. So just kind of having something at every different layer of canopy provides a lot of different habitat niches that things can kind of occupy, different insects can occupy, and also allows you to have a lot more diversity than you might think. So, you know, a taller trees, some smaller trees, some shrubs, a lot of kind of ground cover, just thinking about it at every different layer, you're going to have more insect population, you're going to have more bat habitat, and you're also going to have more food for bats too. And then dead trees are actually really important for bats too. You know, I know sometimes we don't want to leave up dead trees because it might be a safety hazard, and I totally understand that. If you can leave a dead tree up in your property, that's fantastic. You know, a lot of bats will roost in dead trees. Also, even if you don't have bats in your dead trees, you know, rotting wood attracts a lot of different insects. And, you know, even if the tree falls down, I would say leave that on the land, let that break down. Brings all sorts of interesting bugs to the table, so to speak, if you're a bat, which is really fantastic. Sorry, I can't help with puns. And now we have this new gardening for bat guide, which I'm so excited about. We just got this done. So if you go to our website, batcon.org/garden with a capital G, for some reason it doesn't work if it's garden with a lowercase g. I don't know why, but you have to do capital garden. And you can go find this guide, and it talks about a lot of the things I've already mentioned, but you know, it's got a lot of information. And then from this, we hope to really add the different plant lists for different areas. But we are really excited to offer this now. So it'll get you started. Other things to think about, these are just sort of some tips to make your property or your yard more friendly to bats. Keeping it as organic as possible is really, really important. I know a lot of people will spray for mosquitoes, at least down here in Texas, we have so many mosquitoes, but there really is no, pesticide that just kills mosquitoes. If you're spraying for bugs, you're spraying kind of for everything, unfortunately. And a lot of that is bat food. And, if you have a vegetable garden, actually, as Fred mentioned, a lot of bats eat things we consider agricultural pests. So, the things that are eating your kale and your cauliflower, all that larva grows up to be moss, delicious moss for bats. So if you can have an organic vegetable garden, that's really wonderful for bats too. I'll let people who study birds yell at you about keeping your cat indoors during the day. I will just say, keep it indoors at night. It's better for the cat. It's less likely to get taken by, a coyote or something. And, cats will eat bats. They will kind of eat anything. They're little stone cold killers out there. So just bring your cat indoors at night, and that is good for bats. And then the last thing is just thinking about all the light pollution we have in our urban and suburban areas. If you can keep your yard as dark as possible, that is really, really important. A lot of light can disorient the bats, make it hard for them to figure out their echolocation to feed. So just keeping things as dark as possible is really good for bats. It's also really good for a lot of other species of wildlife as well. And then the last thing I wanted to cover was this providing water for bats. I know water is a very limited resource in a lot of areas in the US, especially Texas, especially parts of California, I know. And, people ask me, well, can I put a bird bath out? Does that work for bats? And unfortunately, no, bats don't perch when they drink. They actually drink on the wing, which is what we call it. They kind of swoop down like this bat here. You can see he's kind of gulping up water as he's going. And you really need to provide about 7 to 10 feet of water. Yeah, so you can have a pond, you can have a cattle trough, you can have, if you live near a creek or a lake or a river, that's all fantastic. And if you have, a pond or a trough, you want to make sure it's not a cluttered area. So, not a lot of plants. Bats really need like that kind of clear water to drink. And then another thing with that, if you do want to provide water for bats, we always recommend putting in a wildlife escape ramp. So the bats can get out if they do fall in. Believe it or not, bats can swim. If they fall into water, they just kind of tread around the side of the water, the water, wherever the water is, and they look for a way out. So if you have a ramp, they'll be able to find that and they'll be able to climb out. And that includes all other species of wildlife too that might be visiting your water. And the escape ramps are pretty cheap. You can kind of find them anywhere, and it's just something good to do for your yard. And with that, I think, oh yeah, and then we have Bat Fest. We're so excited to partner with the amazing nonprofit Saved by Nature. They are based out of San Jose, and they have this giant, awesome Bat Fest every October, and it's going to be Saturday, October 22nd from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. There's a lot of fun activities going on. Fred and I are going to be there because we're so cool. I'm going to be doing a bat walk. So we're going to go look for bats on the property during the festival. And, there's just going to be a lot of great stuff. And it's a great way to support Saved by Nature. They do some really amazing work. And BCI is really excited to be a partner. So if you can, come check it out and come say hi.
Thank you, Erin. That was awesome. And thanks to all of you guys for letting me invite Erin and share the presentation with her, just because she's been doing so much great work with all of the back garden stuff. I just knew it would be the perfect fit for you guys. And so I think we've left a good amount of time for questions. And so I'm happy to either keep the slide deck open or close it and just, answer any questions you guys might have. So. Oh,
fantastic, both of you. Oh my gosh, that was so exciting. And the photos were so adorable. My gosh, those little faces, they were so cute. I have a question actually about bat houses. My brother has built them in the past and has put one on the side of his house. He lives kind of more in the country than I do. And he doesn't know if it's ever occupied, but I wondered if you thought that they had very much use.
It's really variable. BCI used to kind of recommend bat houses as kind of a way of, a lot of people want to know what can they do for bats, and bat houses, they're not, the colonization rates are just so variable. It just really depends on kind of where you are and whether you have the right kind of place. And then there's a fair amount of luck too, of like whether the bats are going to find them. And in most cases, most of the bat houses that you can get on the market will appeal to kind of our more common bats, and that's not bad. And it's like, especially if you're from a gardening perspective, you want to like, you know, have bats in your yard that might eat some of mosquitoes or other things that are in your space. But they're not necessarily like a conservation strategy, because they're not going to provide, you know, top quality homes for our bats that need our most attention. So we actually no longer have like a bat house program, although we do a lot of the bat houses that are on the market. For a long time, we sort of certified them to make sure that they were like good quality, you know, like gonna not harm the bats. There's also some growing concern with bat houses in terms of in certain areas. Probably don't need to worry about this too much in the Bay Area, but in other parts that are experiencing really extreme heat waves, that bats that are in bat houses or bat boxes could be a little bit more vulnerable to extreme temperatures. And we've seen some of that happening in other parts of the world. So you know, if you do want to put up a bat house, there are a number of different designs out there. And actually, we have slides. Hold on, let me go back to sharing my presentation again. That kind of gives some just general advice about what kind of bat house to get. 3 or 4 chambers gives a little bit more diversity to the kind of structure. And then this is really the most important is you want, they do much better. A lot of people put them on a pole, and that just doesn't have the thermal mass. Like bats, when they're in a bat house, they don't want a lot of temperature fluctuation. And so they actually want it to be warmer than you think, actually, especially if you're trying to attract a maternity colony, because bats are so small. They have a very high surface to volume ratio, which means that it's energetically really expensive for them to be able to run at their operating temperature as mammals. And so they actually try to use a lot of external heat to kind of make it more efficient for them to, especially for females that have to stay warm to give birth and lactate. Even though they're mammals, like we are, they're what we call heterothermic, in that they can actually turn their metabolisms off and go into a torpor. And so males actually like to find cool places and will actually basically literally chill out for the day, because that's more energetically efficient for them than trying to run hot all day. But females can't do that because they've got to stay active to be able to lactate, nurse their young and take care of their young. So they like to find really hot spots that will make it easy for them to stay at warm temperatures. So you don't want actually sort of like a shady, dark spot for your bat house. What you want is like a warm, sunny, exposed spot, which is then, because that's the standard guidance, why there's a little bit of concern about now worrying about like extreme temperatures. They could actually then overheat. Whereas we used to give the advice, put them in the hottest spot you've got. But things are now hotter than they used to be. So.
Thanks. Yes, and I'm happy to say that my brother's house looks just like that. So he apparently looked it up before he.
And then, and if they get colonized, there's guano that accumulates. So you don't want it right over a doorway or a place where you're going to get foot traffic. There's some people get concerned with. People might have heard of histoplasmosis, which is a fungus that can grow in bat feces. That's more of a concern in places that have like hot, humid caves that are enclosed. You're not going to get histoplasmosis from some scattered bat droppings under a bat house, especially in arid dry air California. But
it's good for your garden. Guano.
Yeah, guano. We pay big bucks for that.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, and a related question about where they live or where they sleep is, they seem to usually be in little families or colonies, except for the solitary ones, maybe that you mentioned. But why do we find just one, like in our patio umbrella? You know,
That's probably a male. Yeah, so the females group up and live together, especially in the active season, partly because they can cuddle. I have this really fabulous Canadian colleague who always talks about a cuddle. He wants to like call it the common scientific term is a cluster of bats, and he's been trying to get us to all adopt saying a cuddle of bats because it's that much cuter.
I like that.
So the females like to cuddle in the summer to stay warm and raise their pups together. They give birth kind of all at the same time, but the males basically hang out by themselves, and they like to be in a place where they can chill out, where they can go into a daily torpor. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Gillis, did you have a hand up?
Gillis?
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, a lot of us are native plant gardeners in the club, or have at least part of our garden devoted to native plants. And we try to focus on plants that are useful for the local pollinators. But are there any species of plants in the Northern California area that we could be focusing on to try and help the bat populations in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think with pollinator gardening and bat gardening, there's a lot of overlap. So probably some of the stuff you already have is, providing food for insects that are, in turn helping the bats. And yeah, I think we'd really love to make a list for Northern California and work on that. It would be wonderful. But I would just say like the more native species, the better, like the more diversity, the better, because you're going to have more insects. And then just thinking about kind of those general guidelines of things that attract more nighttime pollinators, and you're probably already well on your way.
And I forgot to so in California, we have about 25 different species of bats, like statewide. In the Bay Area, there's probably about, between 10 and 16 species that could, not any one backyard's going to have all 16 species, but
that would be amazing.
I know, it would be awesome. Almost all of those are insect eating, and most of our insect eating bats, are fairly generalist in terms of, bats tend to specialize in a size class of insect versus a type of insect. So if it fits their echolocation zone and they can fit it in their mouth, they're going to eat it. But moths and beetles and any kind of aquatic emergent insects, so that includes mosquitoes and caddisflies and mayflies, anything that has a larval form in water and then like erupts from the surface of the water, are all favorite foods.
So, I mean, a lot of us grow milkweeds to encourage, and a lot of us grow Dutchman's pipevine and things like that for butterflies, but we haven't really thought about plants for moths. Are there any particular plants in this area that are good for attracting moths and encouraging increase in the moth populations?
That would be a question for you, Erin. I don't know.
I would say yes, but I don't know what they are yet. So I am based out of Central Texas, and I feel like I'm a great plant person here, but we're trying to grow this program kind of throughout the United States, which is why I really do need help from plant experts such as yourselves to create these local lists. So yeah, I think absolutely there's wonderful plants that you have that will attract moths, and it's just kind of figuring out the different resources and then coming up with that list. So sort of a to be continued, but yes answer. Sorry, that's not great. That's all I got.
I'll just say again about calscape.org that you can say that you only want host plants and filter it in that way, and it'll tell you who who it's a host plant for. And, you know, not very many of those are butterflies. Most of them are moths, I think.
Yeah. And moths tend to be a little bit more generalist than butterflies. Like, you know, monarchs just use milkweed, you know, that's a very specific relationship, but moths tend to kind of maybe focus on like a genus of plants. So you may already have some stuff that works, but that Calscape website is amazing. You guys are so lucky you have that. I wish that existed in every state.
Great. Louise, I think you had a question.
Yeah, how do we know if we actually have bats in our yard? Is there any?
Good question.
We are also, so hopefully soon we'll have a good answer for that. We're working on a program that we're naming our backyard bat survey. But it's not ready to quite roll out yet. Bats all make ultrasonic echolocation calls. And so we can actually record their sounds that they're making that are above our hearing range. And so using what we call them bat detectors, they're basically an acoustic recorder that has an ultrasonic microphone that can then record the sounds of the bats. That gives us a measure of the amount of bat activity that is happening near the detector. And then we now can also identify to species or sometimes just a species group based off of the echolocation calls, because unlike birds that are using sound to advertise themselves to their mates, right? Like when a robin is singing, he's advertising that he's got a good nest. And so there's a lot of bird songs are very distinct because they're using that sound for communication to their conspecifics. Whereas bats are using sound to detect insects out of the night sky. And so there's no real need to specialize in a particular unique signature of the kind of sound that you're making. And there's different ways in which sound works according to the kinds of insects that you're looking for and the kinds of habitats that you like to forage in. And so it means that both within species, there's a little bit more variation. If you're a California myotis, which is one of our bats that we have here in the Bay Area that likes to forage along the edges of trees, you might make a more steep type of call that's really good at distinguishing the background of what we call acoustic clutter of the tree to try to then detect where the insect is against that. Whereas if you then kind of foraged out into an open meadow and it's a little bit more open air, you might change the way that your call is structured so that it kind of carries a little further because you don't have as much clutter. So you get a little bit of variation depending on the habitat within a species. And then there's multiple species that are foraging in similar kinds of habitats. So you get some overlap between species. So it's actually been very challenging to figure out how we can take all the different sounds that bats make and use that to identify species. But luckily with, machine learning algorithms and a lot of the AI kind of technologies we have now, we can measure all sorts of different kinds of features of the calls and get pretty good at saying with some probability, like it's most likely it's this species versus that species. So you can actually buy a relatively inexpensive bat detector that actually attaches to your smartphone. It's called Touch. Yeah. And it just goes right into the port of either your iPhone or your Android device. And there's an app that comes with it and you can stand out there with it and it will play the sound. It has an ultrasonic mic and it plays the sound of the bat so you can hear it. And then it shows you on the screen and will give you the best guess of what species is flying by. So we're working on a program that's going to allow folks to put out one of these sensors, not the ones that attach to your phone, but a little one that you maybe would put out like on a tree or on a pole for a week. And we're hoping to have like a summer solstice bat count kind of activity where everybody could go out and see what bats are in their yards over the summer solstice.
Amazing.
And if you are interested, I'm going to do a bat walk at the Bat Fest with Saved by Nature using the Echometer Touch. If you want to come check it out and see how it works, we'll be using one. Yeah.
Oh, so we have a question in the chat. What do we tell people who are afraid of bats? Yeah, so there's a lot of different myths about bats. Most bats, I mean, basically there isn't really anything to be afraid of from bats. And you followed up with a specific question about rabies. So it's true that bats as wild mammals can carry rabies. Other mammals like skunks and raccoons and foxes can also carry rabies. The reason why we associate bats and rabies maybe more so than other mammals is that because bats are so secretive, we don't often get to see them when they're healthy. But if somebody comes across a bat that maybe is on the garage floor or laying out somewhere, well, there's a good chance that that bat is sick because a healthy bat wouldn't be in a place where you would find it. So the proportion of bats that an everyday member of the public may come across, there's a good chance that that bat is sick. Although the bats that I interact with that are out free flying, healthy bats out in the world, the incidence is actually quite low and lower than in some other mammalian groups. However, that said, rabies is one of those very bizarre diseases that has 100% case fatality rate, which means that if you actually contract the disease, you will die. So we don't mess around. We all get vaccinated. And if you ever do end up, getting bit by a bat, or somebody gets bit by a bat, always tell them to go right away and get their post-exposure series, because if you get vaccinated after your exposure, then you're fine. It actually takes quite a while for the virus to travel up your nervous system, and it's once the virus gets to your brain that there's no way out at that point. But it just, if you see a bat flying around, there's no way, you have to basically come into, very close contact. You basically have to get bit by a bat to have any fear of rabies. You're not going to get rabies from sweeping up bat guano or, seeing bats forage around. There's like no health risk to trying to attract bats to foraging in your garden. If you do see a bat on the ground, it's best to put on, heavy leather gloves and, put it into a shoe box or some other kind of cardboard box. If it's still alive, to call Native Animal Rescue. And if it's dead, probably also to call Native Animal Rescue, because then they'll know what to do in terms of trying to get it tested. The other thing too is that we often think of rabies as being, sort of old Yeller style aggressive foaming at the mouth rabies, but there's actually two forms of rabies. There's the aggressive form and then there's the paralytic form. And so with paralytic form, the bats may look dead, but they're just paralyzed. So even if a bat looks like asleep or partially dead, don't ever handle it with bare hands.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, and yeah. And Joyce looks like has a question.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself, Joyce.
I had an experience with that. About 10 years ago, I had some Latin American, actually Mexican farm workers that were helping me in my garden. And I have a 30-foot boxwood hedge, and they found a bat in the hedge. And there were like 4 of them, and they were all big, strong men. And they ran like I've never seen anybody before. And they were yelling, "Vampiro, vampiro."
Yeah. Well, in Mexico, right. So in Mexico and Central and South America, so in Spanish, the word for bat is murciélago, but vampiro is the word for vampire bats. And of course, in Mexico and Central and South America, there are vampire bats. Right. So there is quite a bit of fear around bats because of the vampire. So there's 3 species of vampire bats in the world. The most common is the common vampire bat all 3 of those species do feed on, they're sanguivorous. So that's the official scientific term for being adapted for blood feeding. The common vampire bat is widely distributed, and it feeds naturally it would actually feed on roosting birds. and also large mammals like tapirs and other things that you might find in the rainforest. But because of how many cattle there are, their populations are actually unnaturally high, and they've actually been their range has been expanding northward because there's so much cattle. They're actually a really cool animal when you study them. I have a friend who studies their social behavior. They're one of the few species in nature that we know about that does real altruism, where they've really listened in kindergarten and abide by the sharing is caring rule. And the way that vampire bats share is that if one goes out and has a successful meal, meaning it comes back with a belly full of blood, and its friend, not necessarily its relative, but its friend, its roost mate, was less successful, didn't find a cow to feed on and is hungry, then the one that it has had a good meal will share by barfing up the blood for its friend. So it's always like a winning story with all the young kid crowds, right? Like sharing is caring, and you barf up your blood meal for your friend. So
what I did to help them not be so afraid, they were hovering on the very far end of my property. And so I have some books, and I brought out the books that showed pictures of the bats that we have here and the bats that they have in Mexico. And they had a map, and I showed them the map that we don't have that bat here. And finally they calmed down and went,
yes.
But I had to rescue that bat because they were about to do away with it. But
yes, yep. Yeah, it's I was once doing some bat work in Costa Rica, and everybody there was referring to the bats as vampiros, and we caught a fishing bat. There's the bulldog fishing bat, which actually flies over the lagoons and things, and it actually gaffs fish with its big feet, much like an osprey. And they're really cool. And the locals that were at the area where I was all spent a lot of time fishing. They were like would fish in the surf. So I started talking about how like, hey, look, this is a fishing bat, and got them like super excited. And they started to like, kind of change their mind a little bit. We also caught some nectar feeding bats, and we talked about how they were just like, nocturnal hummingbirds, and they were starting to get into it. And then we caught a vampire bat. And so they were kind of like, oh, well, which one's this one? And I was like, oh, well, this is Vampiro. And I was like super excited. And there's this thing you can do where you can like try to get a bat to show its teeth by kind of like pulling up on the skin of its forehead a little bit. So I did that, and this vampire bat let out this like blood curdling hiss, and they all ran away and like never came back. And I was like, oh my gosh, my moment of trying to do bat PR has completely backfired. So.
Where was this vampire bat that you found?
What's that?
Where was
This was in Costa Rica. Yeah, near Corcovado. Yeah. So,
well, in spite of that dramatic ending, I think that obviously both Joyce's story and yours show that education is the way. You get people interested and show them the differences and all of that. Fabulous. Other questions for our eminent bat people? No? I saw a note from Tanya about being careful with umbrellas. And yes, we have had that experience when you open your patio umbrella and during the winter, there might be a bat inside. That's right.
I think Sarah raised her
Sarah.
hand.
Just a minute. So is there some kind of vaccine you can get in advance?
For rabies?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are a bat handler, or traveling in areas where you think that you have a high risk of exposure of rabies, you can get a what's called the pre-exposure series. Yeah. And it has this reputation of being really gnarly because like back in the day, I think they had to use like duck albumin or something. But it's just like it used to be 3 series shot. Now it's just a 2 series shot. So it's not. Not any worse than any of the other vaccines. So.
But I think the takeaway is that it's very unlikely that anybody would be bitten.
Yeah, like even
Bats
vets
are shy.
Yeah, right. Like, and even vets don't get rabies pre-exposure generally, just because the incidence of the likelihood of getting exposed to rabies is extraordinarily low. And then if you do, get bit by some, astronomically small chance, the post-exposure series is also highly effective. So it's very, very rare that you are bit and unaware of being bit. Yeah. Yeah, Sarah.
So you would know if you were bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it would hurt and.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's just like living where we are, there's just no way that you would be bit like in your sleep or something, like, there's not really a, you would know.
Yeah, I was just staying in a cabin once and there was a bat in there flying around and we were trying to figure out how to get it out and it was just kind of unnerving.
Yeah. I mean, that happens. And the best way to do that is to open windows and just turn off all the lights and open the windows and let the bat find its way out. And it most often will. And if a bat is flying around inside, the chance that bat is sick is really low. It's probably kind of came in looking either for like a crevice or a roost, trying to do some exploration of trying to find a new place to live, or it was hunting for an insect. And it's like now in an enclosed space, their echolocation is actually really good at being able to find exits. But if lights are on, it could be a little confused. It might take it a little bit of time to find that exit. But it will, given an opportunity to sort of get out of there, it will take it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Erin reminds us that Bat Week is coming up. I think it's the week of the 24th or something like that.
Yes.
And she gives us the website batweek.org, so we can enjoy more batty things. Any more questions or comments for our wonderful women? Well, we just want to thank you so much, both of you. What a special treat, and it's just been so educational and so great. And we will check the BatCon website and follow your work, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, and we are a member-based organization ourselves, and so feel free to look into joining if you're so inclined. And we do send out a bat magazine.
Oh yeah, do you have one? I don't have one.
3 times a year. So like here's one that was all about durian.
It's a lovely publication.
Yeah,
wonderful.
So feel free to check that out. So.
Oh, that's so great. Well, if there's no further questions, thank you so much.
Well, our pleasure. Thank you guys. Wonderful questions, and
both of you, and keep up the good work. And we will try to plant the right things and do the right thing in our gardens.
Excellent.
Yay! Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you,
Good.
All right.
Thank you. And so club members, if there's other announcements, feel free to let us know. Is there anything else that I forgot to talk about, or anything anyone wants to share? I'll just share that the Merritt College plant sale is this Saturday from 9 to 3. And those who haven't been there, Merritt College Horticulture Department is fantastic. They usually have a really amazing plant sale. So that's their fall sale this Saturday from 9 to 3. And that there's a bat program at UC Botanical on October 27th, an in-person presentation, October 27th. I think it costs $20, 5 o'clock. So look into that if your appetite for bat information has been whetted by this presentation. Eileen, or do you have a comment or question or announcement?
It was an answer. Someone a while ago in the chat asked, thought maybe my yucca was taken by a deer, and that not possible, not possible at all. And there are hack marks and pieces left behind and a trail of blossoms. So as somebody took each flower and made leis for a wedding, or I don't know, but each flower had a bee in it. I was so sad to have it gone. So I'm going to go out and water the little valiant pup and hope it survives. We're trying to figure out a way to electrify it, but not yet. Anyway,
yeah. Oh.
But anyway, glad I got at least the photo. And
yeah, the photos are wonderful.
So anyway, and I have a cutting that's growing also because it was leaning out into the sidewalk. And the leaves are kind of sharp, I must say. So, okay.
All right. Well, thanks for that sad story.
Yeah,
yeah, we do.
Beautiful flower, sad story.
Yeah, well, we do lose things. Bernadette and I know that some of the things we planted in our neighborhood were stolen. You know, you put stuff out in the world and somebody has their own idea about it, but at least we're trying. We're trying and we keep trying, right? We keep trying. Good. Well, thank you all so much. Please don't forget, next Thursday, same time, same station, is the board meeting. And anyone is always welcome to come to that. And that the native plant meeting is that same evening, next Thursday at 7 p.m. And that the edible plant meeting is the following Thursday at noon. Please don't forget our newsletter. If you have things to say or share, send them to Robin at any time during the month. And if you put in the subject newsletter, it's more likely she'll find it later. We all get so much email, don't we? But thank you all so much. And I wanted to share, let me see if I can do it just as we're leaving. I'm not positive. This will be the third time I've tried to share it, but I'm going to try again. This is a video that Bernadette sent me of a waterfall that her husband built in the backyard. I hope you can hear it. Oh, yay. I hope you could hear that. It was so, I've listened to it about 10 times. I find it so beautiful.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
I think he should hire himself out, but he laughed when I said that. So maybe not. Anyway, thank you all so much. Talk to you soon, and have a wonderful month. And I hope I see you at some of the other meetings. Email me if I forgot anything. Bye.